Showtime.
Sweetheart, I wouldn't even bother with him. He's the moron.
Hey everyone. So recently I threw up a poll on my Instagram to see what movie I should cover next for my channel. There were a few solid suggestions, some more questionable than others. I'm sorry, Matt, but the world is not ready for that one. However, the fan favorite that couldn't be avoided was, of course... And you know what? I'm honestly kind of surprised and a little irritated by this. I have a respect for the craft that champions films like The Godfather, Fight Club, Pulp Fiction, so why on earth would I want to waste 113 minutes of my life on this man-hating, misinterest propaganda that's parading itself as feminism? This tacky, over-the-top production feels as plastic and superficial as the dolls that inspired it. I am appalled as a lover of film, to have endured such a painfully embarrassing experience that only sets back women a couple hundred decades. I saw Barbie 3 times. Yeah, sorry if I scared any of my friends just now. I have not gone off the deep end. I mean, I have, just not like that. At the time of this recording, Barbie has become the highest grossing movie of 2023, and it's also Warner Brothers' most successful film to date. So why is Barbie so popular? Well, for starters, the world loves a great meme. With Barbie and Oppenheimer opening on the same day, the sheer coincidence of these two seemingly polar opposite films releasing simultaneously essentially became a marketing campaign in and of itself, and thus, the Barbenheimer sensation was born. But we're not going to get into all that. I'll probably cover Oppenheimer someday, I don't know, maybe around award season, but today we're not here for that. Today, we're here for Barbie. There was so much intrigue for Barbie, specifically prior to the release, because there was so little we actually knew about the movie. All that was revealed in the trailers were basically, Barbie is having an existential crisis and is going to go on an adventure to solve it. And that's about it. The other glimpses we'd see in trailers and TV spots made the Barbie movie kind of look like a fever dream. And it kind of was, but there was so much more to it than that. From a technical standpoint, everything about Barbie Land is nothing short of impressive. Seeing her in the dream house interacting with all the little accessories that come with it, to her driving around waving to everyone and everything, is what really sold me into how incredibly detailed all the sets, props, and costume design are. There's a great moment that utilizes how inventive you can be with Barbie Land when Ken hurts himself attempting to impress Barbie, and they roll in this ambulance that just folds out like the toy set would. It's a great gag that displays humor and also blends it with some solid craft work. Speaking of this gag, I love the way that these special effects are used to highlight how silly this movie is. When Ken goes to hit the wave, he bounces right off and comically just somersaults for like 3 seconds in the air. It looks ridiculously over the top and campy, which is why it works for Barbie. I don't really recall a ton of overuse of like CG and special effects in this movie, but when it's done the way that it is here, it's only in service to the wacky humor that Barbie is trying to establish throughout. Earlier I briefly mentioned the costume design, which, Barbie Land exclusively, is all elaborate, colorful, and lavish. But aside from the obvious appeal, what I like about the designs is that they're used to tell you about the characters and their roles in this world. President Barbie has this elegant but bedazzled dress and sash, Writer Barbie is wearing a professional suit, and Weird Barbie is dressed weirdly. It gives you the necessary information you need without having to dive into the unique personality of each Barbie. So the first 15 to 20 minutes is essentially a giant showcase of the film's incredible visuals. And if you're gonna invite the audience into this larger-than-life world, that's the best way to do it. And of course the leads themselves do the respective roles justice. I couldn't think of a better actress to bring stereotypical Barbie to life better than Margot Robbie, who to no surprise knocks it out of the park. We've seen her tackle both wacky and dramatic roles before, but none quite like this, especially doing both styles within the same film. It isn't easy to balance a fairy tale-like optimism and charm with very poignant, emotional displays, which are some of the highlights of this movie. I think everyone can agree that Barbie is the role of a lifetime for Robbie, and I wouldn't be surprised if she was at the very least nominated for Best Actress come award season. If we're talking about performances here though, for me personally, I could not be more excited for Ryan Gosling as Ken. I have been a Ryan Gosling stan for years now. I have always felt that his comedic chops in particular were always incredibly underrated, so I was excited to see him as this himbo turned toxic douchebag to really let all that comedic work go to 11, and I was not disappointed. Ken was funny in a clueless and adorable sense in Barbie Land, but after coming back from the real world, his performance was brimming with subtle but hilarious douchey gags over and over. There's a moment where he and Barbie are having a conversation, during which he momentarily pauses his thought in order to do a pull-up. It's just one of the dozens of instances where Gosling gets to finally shine as a comedic actor. He's done romance, he's done dramatic and very serious roles, but none of which where he gets to completely dial up the comedy quite like Ken. He also takes part in one of the absolute best sequences of the movie, the I'm Just Ken scene. I don't know if I just wasn't expecting such impressive choreography, but the coordination of some of the dancing was downright captivating. At first I was taken aback, in a good way, by a Ken-centered power ballad 2/3 into the movie, but was then floored by how it all came together. Props to Gosling, props to Simu Liu, and everyone who brought that scene to life. It was amazing. So, if Ryan Gosling doesn't get nominated for Best Supporting Actor, I'm going to call the police. One of the last aspects of the movie that I want to talk about is tone. Now, going into Barbie, I think we were all expecting bubbly silliness from front to back, but when you take into account who's behind the camera, it kind of forces you to re-examine any predetermined expectations you're going to have. The director of this film is Greta Gerwig, whose most notable works are Frances Ha, Little Women, and Lady Bird. She co-wrote this movie alongside her husband and fellow filmmaker Noah Baumbach, who's responsible for this.
Every day I wake up and I hope you're dead!
Having that in mind, I knew that there was going to be something else with this movie, I just didn't really know how that was going to look like. Both of these filmmakers are known for realistic, coming-of-age dramas, so how do you incorporate that between all of the wackiness of Barbie Land? And the answer is the real world. When Barbie sets out on an adventure past her own experiences and biases, she's now able to actually feel the pain and hardships that her world never allowed. Barbie realizes that there's so much work that needs to be done that's beyond her. And it's in those moments where the chaos comes to a halt and all the glitz and the glam subsides where this movie really starts to stand out. It was all fun before, but the inclusion of the real world, aided by characters of Gloria and Sasha, are what helped give leeway to the tone starting to bounce from comedy to drama. Albeit still pretty lighthearted generally. The more serious moments come in waves, but I feel like the impact is felt all the more because of it. But I'm sure the last thing you want to hear is feminism mansplained by a dude, so instead I'll talk about Ken. After all, I am a man. After going to the real world, Ken subscribes to the notion that the world owes him everything. And while so much of this is played for laughs, it highlights a greater issue. The movie isn't stating that men are inherently evil, or even bad for that matter. By the film's conclusion, I feel that the message was explicitly stating that patriarchy is the core problem here. One of the many disadvantages of adhering to patriarchal standards from a male perspective is the idea of having to be a service in some way. You have to be a provider, you have to be strong, you have to be cool, you have to be interesting, and in Ken's case, completely subservient to another person. But at the end of the day, the only thing that made him happy was the ability to just be. And I can actually relate to that. I have definitely been in the position where I would completely revolve myself around the girls I was interested in. And while I don't think I had bad intentions per se, there was always the thought in the back of my head where I would think, well, maybe if I said this thing or if I did that thing, then maybe I would get that chance, maybe I would be seen. And it took me way too long to realize just how unfair that was to those girls. There are a lot of factors as to why someone would or wouldn't like you, but I know from my own experience now that a relationship is not and should not be transactional. And if you're going into it with these selfish interests at heart, then maybe it's time to reevaluate where you're coming from. And I did. Once I finally learned how to undo these toxic traits with these caveats that I inadvertently placed, I was able to learn, I was able to listen, and just enjoy genuine friendship. I was much more happier and far more fulfilled in my relationships with women and just in general. And ironically then, found myself in a relationship with a beautiful person without really having to try for it. It's true when people say that nothing in life comes easy, but there's so much fulfillment, personal growth, and happiness just waiting to be had once you learn how to let go of these unhealthy habits in favor of the continuous process of being better and doing better for yourself just for the sake of you. Trust me, I know from experience. I am a former nice guy.
Move this man!
So maybe us guys should learn from Ken's example and just be us. His own experience is just one of the many facets as to how patriarchy affects us men, but I won't dig more into that because if I have to explain the patriarchy at great length, we'll be here till the sun burns out. Now granted, I don't expect this movie to solve patriarchy in any sense, but I appreciate the conversations that are able to be made from it if we're willing to have those hard and uncomfortable talks. But I'll get off my soapbox now. I really think Barbie is an essential viewing, not just for film diehards or women, but I really think there's something for everyone here. You don't have to take my word for it though, I think the success of the film speaks for itself. I think one of the only downfalls that'll come as a result is the studio's misunderstanding of Barbie's success and try to capitalize on toy-related movies going forward. Which I'm sorry, I can't say I'm like all too thrilled about a Hot Wheels movie. What, are they gonna try to link car obsessions to toxic masculinity and provide some sort of commentary on that? All in all, Barbie succeeds in its watchability by being goofy to a fault while having a heart of gold. In other words, I guess you could say it was...
Sublime!